All right, all right. We are back for another episode of the Droppin Knowledge podcast. This is your host, Knowledge Beckham, and we are at episode 5 of season 2. It seems like time is flying, but the YouTube page is popping, the podcast is popping. So I want to shout out everyone for the tremendous support that you've given this Droppin Knowledge podcast since we've gotten started. And these episodes continue to get better and better because we keep educating the culture and dropping more and more info. And so today I am super excited. I kind of went outside of my personal network, but I had to get this young lady on once I saw her story. And I think you're going to learn a lot from her today. If you're an entrepreneur, someone looking to get your business off the ground, but you want to make sure that you structure it and do it correctly, this is the lady that we should be chatting with. And so I want to welcome attorney Candice S. Patrick to the Dropping Knowledge podcast. How are you doing, Candice?
Hi, I'm doing awesome. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. Like I said, I really appreciate you connecting, given that we were not connected prior, and you kind of taking a look at what we were doing and then contributing your intellect to helping people and helping our listeners basically become better entrepreneurs. And so the reason that I was kind of drawn in is I saw you had an article that was written about you. Can't remember the name of the outlet. It was the Dallas something Observer or something like that.
Voyage Dallas.
Voyage Dallas, right? So I saw your story, and it was an amazing story. And given that, even though you're in Dallas, I saw you were from Chicago. I was like, okay, I got to get her. I got to get her on the Dropping Knowledge podcast. And so let's start there, Candice. Let's talk before you were attorney. Talk about Candice S. Patrick. Tell us about you, where you're from, and then please make sure that you share your story because I think it's a powerful story.
Absolutely. And thanks again for connecting with me and inviting me to your show. It's a lovely show. As far as me, who I was before an attorney, a lot of people don't know, but I grew up in DCFS, Child Protective Services, basically. And I had a really rough childhood, very, very traumatic. Um, my mom, and I never knew who my dad was, so he was not in the picture. My mom was a chronic drug user, so Child Protective Services removed me and all of my brothers from her care at a very young age. And so I kind of bounced around from family members initially. And at the age of 11, I experienced some really traumatic stuff with one of my family members, my
Mhm.
mother's sister, and one of her sisters. And from that moment, that day of trauma, I ran away. And after I ran away, it was so traumatic that I said I didn't want to go back. And I ended up from that moment going to live in shelters, going to live in group homes, different foster care. And that started at age 11 when I left, my family's care, my blood family. And from age 11 all the way on to adulthood, I was always moving around to different homes and stuff. Um, but when I lived in a group home, for me, being a part of Child Protective Services, living in a group home was probably the most family-like. Like if I would have been living with a regular family, all of the young ladies that I grew up with, I considered them like cousins, and the staff members who were there with us, I considered them like aunties and stuff like that. And however, but it was still a little traumatic being away from your family and things like that. And during the time where I lived in a group home, that's when I really developed a passion for learning, so to
Mhm.
speak.
Okay.
Um, with so much drama going on, that was kind of my way of drowning out my circumstances, basically. So I would go and focus in on my homework, focus in on trying to get the best grades. And the better grades I got, basically, the more I wanted to learn, the more I wanted to study. And so pretty much because my life was bouncing around so much, I moved a lot. I lived pretty much everywhere in Illinois. I lived in the south side, I lived in the suburbs, I lived in the western suburbs, I lived lots of places. But school was always my stability. No matter where I lived, I would find my way to school every day. So needless to say, at a young age, I want to say maybe 17, I decided that I wanted to be an attorney.
Okay.
And, my caseworker at the time, everyone is given a caseworker when they're in Child Protective Services. And it's just
Okay.
basically a person that is responsible for keeping up with you, enrolling you in school, finding you somewhere to live. So at that time, I was very close with my caseworker, and I told him, look, I want to be an attorney, but I need to hang out with some attorneys first so I can see what it is that they really do. And so immediately he hooked me up with someone who not only grew up in child protective services like me, but
Wow.
she was also a Black female attorney. And so
Wow.
it was just history from there, because having that connection with her, it showed me that this is not something that is just a dream. It can be a reality so long as
Right.
I continue to pursue it. So the rest was history. I went to college. I knew right away. I knew going through every stage after that I wanted to be an attorney. So every move I made, it was with that in mind, that I want to go to law school and I want to become an attorney.
Wow. That's amazing. That is amazing. As I'm sure you know, that story could have went so many different directions, and to see you accomplish becoming an attorney is amazing. And then actually your mentor actually having a similar path to you, I'm sure that was super important in terms of being able to identify with someone who had a similar path. So when you said when you were 17, you knew you wanted to be an attorney. Did you have any idea of what type of law you wanted to do, or what you wanted to do as an attorney, or was it just more important to be an attorney?
Well, absolutely. At that time, I knew that I wanted to do criminal law.
Okay.
And the reason being is that, of course, I would watch shows, Law and Order. And of course, being from the urban areas in Chicago, I was very familiar with the criminal justice system.
Right.
A lot of my family members have been arrested. A lot of my loved ones, I got to, unfortunately observe them go through the process. A lot of times, the arrests and things like that were unjust. And so I kind of developed that passion for criminal law. And I was dead set on being the best criminal defense attorney, in the world, right?
Right.
So that was my goal.
Right.
Needless to say, like I tell a lot of my mentees who want to be attorneys, is that before you go to law school, you kind of have a limited view of the possibilities of the different areas you can practice, right? Most regular people, all they really know about is criminal law, you know what I mean? Or you can get sued, so civil law.
Right.
No one knows about business law. No one knows about entertainment law. No one knows about tax law. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, things kind of changed a little bit when I went off to law school.
Got it. Okay. Well, let's move into I guess post law school. So you went to University or Northern Illinois University, right? That's where you got your law degree from.
Yes.
And then you decided to move to Dallas. What took you to Dallas? Why Dallas?
Honestly, it was a spiritual move. I'm highly spiritual. So as you know, to become an attorney and actually practice, you have to take a test that's called the bar exam. Okay. And that test is notorious for being extremely hard, and a lot of people fail. And so leading up to my last semester in law school, we were required to register for the test. And so it was during that time where I really sat down and prayed and meditated and went within myself and tried to figure out, where is it that I want to live long term? Because listen, I only want to take this test one time.
Right.
Okay. And so I knew I did not want to stay in Illinois because, one, it's super cold. I just envisioned myself like this big fancy attorney in a warm climate,
Yeah.
I really meditated on it and I really prayed about it. And I wanted somewhere with a warmer climate. I wanted somewhere with a better economy. And, just somewhere just a little bit more upbeat or whatever.
Yeah.
And so Texas won. So I had like a list, like Texas, California, Florida, and then eventually Texas won. And so that's how I got here.
That's dope. That's dope. I love Texas, Dallas, Houston. It's a good town. So let's talk about what you do now in your day to day, right? So what I found interesting, did you start off at a law firm first or working for some company, or did you immediately know that you wanted to have your own practice?
So it was a little weird. So throughout all of my years in law school, I worked for Northern Illinois University's general counsel.
Okay.
So I was like, their clerk and right-hand person. So I got that experience. And then when I graduated and moved to Texas, I worked a little bit for different firms or whatever. but I kind of knew right off back that I did want to start my own firm. It just was that phase of like having one foot in with my firm and another foot working for someone else. But again, that was another spiritual moment for me, because I remember, I was working for this firm and it was on an independent contractor basis. And it was not a firm that I wanted to be at long term. It was something I was just doing because I was new to Texas. And legend has it in Texas is if you didn't go to school here, or if you don't have any big name people to vouch for you, it would be difficult for you to get a job. This is the story amongst other attorneys that I know who are from out of state. And so anyways, I had this particular position as an independent contractor with the law firm. And I remember the owner of the firm put me in his office to ask me to become salary. And, I said, okay, I'll consider it. And so I said, well, what's the salary? And he only wanted to offer me about $30,000 a year. And so, in that moment, I'm like, listen, it's not happening. I'm making more than that as an independent contractor. And he kind of tried to belittle me a bit, and I had to let him know who I was, and that I'm the person that graduated magna cum laude and worked for a general counsel making more than that and whatever. Needless to say, after that conversation, I really prayed because my spirit was unsettled. And I kept praying, God, give me a sign when I should go full force with my law firm. Okay. And I promised within like a couple of days of that conversation, the owner told me if I was not going to be a salaried attorney at $30,000, then I could not do independent contracting work for his firm. And I was the happiest fired person. Well, I don't know if it's fired or whatever, but I was the happiest person ever, because for me, I took that as a sign that this is the time now to go full-fledged with my law firm. Okay. And that was February of last year. And so ever since then, I've been doing my own firm, and I've made $30,000 on my own over, you know what I mean?
Right, absolutely. And you're building your own. That's an amazing story.
That's kind of how I got into my own firm.
That's dope. Congrats. That's it's amazing, and I'm sure it's only up from here. So let's talk about so services wise and what you offer to clients. Who's kind of your target customer, right? Who do you kind of work with, or who do you find yourself working with in this first year of business?
Sure. So actually, my law firm is what's considered general practice. So we handle a wide variety of legal areas. So it ranges from business law, family law, civil law. So if someone hurts themselves, we get to sue, all the way down to criminal law. However, about 97 or 98% of my clientele base are business owners. Okay. So we heavily focus on working with entrepreneurs, and now helping them navigate the legal aspects of business law.
Excellent. So let's jump in there. I know that, again, for everybody on the podcast here and on our live, appreciate you guys joining. Feel free to tag anyone that you think would benefit. Again, we're talking to a current attorney, Candice S. Patrick. We're going to jump into the information she can share with you to help you to structure, set up your business the proper way. Make sure that you guys are also following us on the Droppin Knowledge podcast page on Facebook, as well as on Instagram. So let's say, Candice, I have a business, right? And I do. I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur. And so I have ideas, and I usually bring them to fruition. So as an entrepreneur, when should I connect with you? Is it idea time? Should it be when I'm actually ready to launch the business? Should it be after I've had the business up and running and it's actually bringing in some revenue? When's the best time to connect with you, and why?
So I would say, in the idea phase, you always want to connect with me, just because a lot of people don't understand how intellectual property works. So you might have an idea and you might go and tell multiple people about it. Well, most people don't understand that ideas are not copyrightable. Someone can just take your idea and steal it, right? So with that being said, as soon as you come up with the idea that you're actually serious about, that you feel like, yes, I'm going to, start trying to bring this to fruition, then go ahead and consult with an attorney. And then that way I can at least tell you, hey, that's a great idea. Keep it to yourself, write your ideas down, but don't tell anyone until we get to the phase where we are ready to file registrations and things like that to protect your intellectual property.
Break that down for me. So IP, right? If anybody's in the business world, they've probably heard IP or intellectual property. But for those folks that don't understand that language, can you tell us what intellectual property actually is?
Absolutely. And I go through this a lot with my clients, educating them. So intellectual property is kind of like an umbrella, right? Now, let's start with the basics. We know what regular property is, right? So your dog, you said you have a dog, that's technically your property. If you own a house, that's your property. If you own your vehicle, that's your physical property. So
Right.
intellectual property is the same, except it's your property that you develop from your mind, okay? So your creations, your things, your inventions and things like that, your branding, everything that's coming from your mind, that is your intellectual property. So the word intellectual property, like I said, it's an umbrella for 3 different categories, all right? So under that umbrella, you have trademarks, you have copyrights, and you have patents, all right? Okay. Now, the way I like to explain it to people so they can understand what each category is responsible for.
Yep.
So I'll give you an example. Let's say that we come up with a new invention and we create a car that can float in the sky. Now, I don't know if they already have this, but I'm trying to think of the most wildest thing that I know isn't created. So if we come up with a new car and we call it the knowledge car because it can float in the sky, right? Now, the creation of the actual vehicle is an invention. So that right there would need patent. It would need to be patented to protect the actual, whatever electrical engineering and everything that went into the actual invention of the vehicle so that no one else could replicate that and, use it as their own. That would be a patent, right?
Okay.
Now, say, for example, we wanted to come up with some type of marketing, so a commercial or something, and we use some type of cool, slogan, or we use some type of musical singers to basically, advertise our vehicle.
Okay.
That in and of itself would be some type of, that would be a copyright because it's more of a musical type of literary creation, right? So our commercial and stuff like that would be copyrighted. But then knowledge is the name of our vehicle. So we came up with a nice little logo for it. Now then, that is our brand. We want to trademark that. Got it?
Got it.
So
Gotcha.
we're walking through each one of them.
Gotcha. Okay, that's a great breakdown. Probably one of the best breakdowns.
Try to make it as simple as possible.
Absolutely. So, great. So I'm an entrepreneur. I understand those 3 things. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's do it. But obviously, there's cost, right? And what prohibits a lot of entrepreneurs is they don't have the capital maybe to properly fund their businesses. And so, what do we do? What do you suggest in that case? Because I've done trademarks before, and I mean those things when you're doing searches and it can become expensive. And at the end of the day, you don't even know if this business is going to work, right? Is there, do you advise on, should I try going a little bit further down the road with the business first? What happens? Like if I don't have money, what options do I have? What kind of advice do you give if the capital is not there to do things correctly from start?
So if you, as far as like intellectual property, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for intellectual property, the moment that you use the logo, or the moment that as far as copyright, the moment you write down that song or create that choreography or whatever, it's technically your protection. It's yours, right? So okay. For example, let me make it clearer. For rappers, right? The moment they go in that studio and they record that song, it's technically copywritten, right? Okay. The problem is, if someone tried to use your stuff, you could not sue them until you actually file a federal copyright. You see what I mean?
Got it.
So
yep.
Technically, if you can't afford it, just try to keep your stuff to, how would I put this? I would say try to, if you haven't written it down or if you haven't went in the studio and vocalized it yet, try to keep your ideas to yourself as much as possible, as I said earlier, because we can't protect ideas, okay? But if you're doing music and stuff like that, the moment that you release it or the moment you write that book, it's technically copywritten. So I would just say, when you start blowing up more, then just slowly, bring your money to an attorney. That's really the best advice that I can give in that situation.
Right.
But absolutely, as far as ideas, I know, especially with minorities, we come up with so many brilliant ideas, but it usually gets stolen, especially looking at history and our ancestors and a lot of the things that they created. It's always our ideas that get stolen. So that's really what I want to emphasize, that you guys would keep to yourself and protect, because we can't protect the ideas. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you just got to keep that to yourself, right?
Yep.
But like, say, for example, trademarks. We talked about copyrights just now. Say, for example, trademarks. Once you're using a trademark, again, you know, you have rights to it, because you can say, hey, starting, you know, August 10th, I started using this logo. This is mine, right? But again, you don't have sufficient rights in it. Let's say that.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So kind of just start saving your money and just eventually, you know, make it a priority and eventually go to an attorney and get it done.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I know when starting a business, there's different type of business entities. You know, you have LLCs, you have sole proprietors, S corps, C corps. Kind of talk about the different entities and you know, why would someone do X over Y?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you have general partnerships, you have sole proprietorships, then you have like LLCs and corporations. Now, partnerships, that's just if, you know, you and I decided, hey, we're going to start this Droppin' Knowledge podcast and we're going to be business partners. Okay. But we have no liability protection. That means that if someone decided to sue, they will sue us directly. Okay. The same goes for a sole proprietorship. The sole proprietorship, you know, it allows you to be able to do things like, you know, buy in bulk. You know what I mean? You can still get you an EIN number and stuff like that. But the problem is you don't have any liability protection. That means, again, if someone didn't like something you did and when you were operating your business, when they sue, they will sue you directly, right?
Okay. Yep.
Now, moving on to the LLC and the corporation, those both give liability protection. So the corporation, I'll start with that first because it's the oldest form of legal entity. And a corporation is usually very, very formal. There are a lot of legal requirements. For example, corporations, they're required by law to meet at least once a year. You know, all shareholders. Generally, people want to do corporations when, you know, they're intending to do international business as well as within the U.S., or if they're trying to seek out investors, because investors are not going to want anything other than a corporation, right? And the reason why is because with corporations, you can go public on the stock market, okay? You can't do that with, you know, the other entities, okay? But so the corporation is basically, it's cool, it's nice, but it's very formal. It's a lot of requirements, you know, presidents, vice presidents, secretaries, treasurer, that kind of thing. So to make things a little bit more simple for, you know, business owners who did not want all the formalities, the government went ahead and created LLCs. And so with LLCs, again, you get the legal shield, meaning if someone sues you, they don't get to get to your personal assets, okay? So for example, if you and I were in business with the Droppin' Knowledge podcast and it's an LLC or a corporation, same goes for a corporation, and someone tried to sue us for something we said on the show, guess what? They could not sue you and I directly and get our personal assets. They would only be able to recover from whatever the LLC had in its bank account. That's it. Okay. Minus minor circumstances. So if you're doing something intentional that's egregious, then they can get to you personally. But that rarely ever happens. And then with the LLC, it doesn't have all of the formal requirements as a corporation. So there's no annual meetings that you have to have. There's no, you know, president, vice president, and all of that stuff. So the LLC is kind of more attractive for most business owners because it's giving you that liability protection, and it's also less requirements, right? Because most business owners are very busy, so they don't have time to keep up with annual meetings and write down the minutes of the meetings and all of that stuff, right? So that's why most business owners go with the LLC. So did that kind of, you know?
That was amazing. Yeah, absolutely. That took me entity by entity. And is that where you find most of your clients? They fall kind of in the LLC realm or corporations, or they're a mixture of both?
Most of them, overwhelmingly, most of them are LLCs. Yeah.
Okay.
And I usually have that conversation with my clients. You know, once they hire me, we'll talk about, well, what are your goals? Is this something that you see yourself long-term, you know, going public on the stock market? Are you actively trying to get investors? You know what I mean? Because if that's the case, then yes, we want to create you a corporation. right? But most of them, they're just really good at, either cooking or making clothes or whatever. And they just simply want to have something a little bit more legal, technically, right? So then they'll go with the LLC.
Got it. Wow. Yeah, that's good information. So again, we do this at times. I know that, not that I want to discount her services, but since she is on the podcast, if you guys have any questions while we're actually filming live here, feel free to drop those questions in the comments, and Attorney Candice S. Patrick may absolutely answer that question for you. And so now we've started the business, right? We've done the any copywriting, trademarking that we needed to do. We've formed our entity, right? And so great, I got my business up and running. Now it's time for me to go make some money. How am I working with you as we move forward? Do most entrepreneurs need to have you on retainer? Do I just need to have your number in case I need you? Or is there ongoing work that I should require from you as my business starts to do business that would put me in the best position?
Sure. It really just depends on, your individual business. Each of my clients, they're all different. Some of them just have my number, and when they need something, they hit me up and say, hey, Candice, I need you to review this contract before I sign it. And then some of them have more extensive legal needs. So they have me on a monthly retainer, right? And they're reserved a certain amount of hours per month, no matter what, of my services, because they have such a high demand for my legal services. And then, another thing that I offer to some of my clients is I created a monthly subscription, which is only $19. And so that's for the people who, like you said, brand new business owners, sometimes they can't afford the fees and certain things like that. And so I took that into account, and I said, let me create something that's really, affordable. So there's really no excuse for business owners or whoever to not seek counsel from an attorney. Okay. And so that's something else that some of my clients might do, because with that, you get one monthly phone call with me for 30 minutes, and we get to chat and consult about whatever you want to talk about. But then throughout the rest of the month, you get unlimited emails. So you can email me as much as you want and say, hey, Candice, I'm sitting here with so-and-so, and we're thinking about, entering into this agreement. What should I do? Then I can hit you back and say, okay, don't pay any money until we get a written contract, right? Simple things like that comes along with that subscription. So different levels of what I offer for people, but it really just depends on how much you need my services. So for example, the clients who put me on retainer, those are clients who, throughout the month, they're constantly coming to me for different things. And then I'll suggest to them, hey, look, it's actually more affordable for you to put me on retainer. So that way, you know exactly what you're paying every month, and you know exactly how many hours of my service you're going to get, versus calling me 5 times a month. And each time you're paying me a flat fee. You know what I mean? So it really just depends on the business owner. More seasoned business owners, they usually have more legal needs because they're entering into many different agreements on a frequent basis. Now, newer business owners, they're really not going to need me on retainer because they're still trying to get their business out there. Those types of business owners will probably just hit me up when they need something, which would be like trademarks, contracts, and things like that, right?
Right. Wow, that 1999 offer sounds amazing for a new business owner. So where did you come up with that? How did you come up with that? Is that something you saw other attorneys doing, or is that just long term? Maybe start to work with gives you an opportunity maybe to work with newer people today, and maybe they become clients down the road that actually are doing the retainers. Kind of just talk about coming up with that offer.
Yeah, so really, it's actually pretty new. I came up with it within these past couple of months. And the reason why I did is because I have so many people who come to me when things are going wrong. And I'm like, why didn't you come to me before, you acted, or before you gave the person your money, or before, you know what I mean?
Right.
And, a lot of people, like I had one client where she had this big client who was hiring her. And so I told her, hey, yeah, we need to get this under contract. And eventually she, kind of wanted to be cheap. And so she said, well, no, I don't think it's that big of a deal to get this under contract or whatever. sure enough, months later, the people didn't pay her money, and then you have to come to me, and now we got to do all this legal stuff. And so I thought to myself, what can I do as an attorney to make myself more available for people who are either afraid to pay, for actual services, or who really don't have it. And so that's why I came up with the $19.99 subscription, because at that point, it's really no excuse for you not to reach out to an attorney.
Right, right. That's a really it's a really awesome offering to put out there for folks. I mean, it's amazing. Like you said, that almost gives no entrepreneur a reason not to be kind of in contact with you. Talk about kind of the challenge. You mentioned that you started your own practice a little bit over a year ago. Starting a business is difficult enough, right? Just finding customers and marketing your business, et cetera. But then also you're an attorney, right? Which is a heavy workload within itself. Kind of talk about how do you do that all? Like, how do you handle that challenge of building a business, but then also being an attorney and doing legal work that could be taking up most of your time?
Sure. So when I first started, I was kind of concerned about that, especially with me being new to the state of Texas. Of course, I would have, a lot of people back home in Chicago contacting me, but unless it was something, that I could do virtually, such as an LLC or trademark, I generally would not take the case because, it's too much back and forth. So I was concerned about that. But what I started doing was, one, making myself more visible on social media. So that way, if somebody ever, did need an attorney, I'd be the first person that popped into their mind, right? And then also I started going to a lot of different events. And as a business owner and entrepreneur, you cannot be shy, okay? Unless
Right.
your work is just like, unless you're some type of artist or something, you can just sit your work there and people can say ooh and ah. But other than that, you can't be shy. So I'm a very friendly person. And whenever I'm talking to people, I always let them know what I'm doing. If I'm at some type of restaurant or whatever it is, I'm always talking to people. I'm always saying, here's my card. If you need an attorney, I love the food, or I love the way you do hair, whatever it is. If you need a contract or an LLC, I can help you. So I really just was friendly, and I was not shy about letting people know what services I provided. Another thing is that I got really connected with in the legal industry here. So I know quite a few attorneys. And so when you know other attorneys, they will send you clients. So sometimes they might get a call for something that they don't handle, or they might just be too busy. And
Right.
so they'll say, hey, call Candice. She's good. She'll take care of it for you. And so just generally, those are some of the ways in which I, was able to constantly get customers and kind of market and stuff like that. As far as the time constraint with balancing, my legal workload, if I'm not marketing, if I'm not bringing in customers, then there is no workload.
Yeah.
So for me, it was kind of just like, okay, I'm gonna take out, a couple of times a week to either go to an event or come up with some educational posts to put on Facebook or Instagram, right? To constantly be keeping myself in people's minds, so when they do need an attorney, they can come right to me.
Right. Got it. So where do you? I mean, I know obviously you're just getting going, really a year in, but what do you see as the future for your practice? What does the future look like? A successful, if this was successful, what is it going to look like to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And so in January, which is a couple of months away, it'll be 2 years that I've been running my firm.
Wow.
So as far as the future, I see really big things. I already have a celebrity client now,
Okay.
and so pretty much the sky is the limit. I anticipate working with many more clients, especially business owners. It's always a joy for me to work with business owners. It's the happy part of my practice.
Right.
So I see more of those kind of people. And I'll be honest. Look, Beyonce has been in my dreams for these past few years, and so I
Okay.
think Beyonce will be my client one day.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So,
I ain't mad at
yeah,
that.
that's really it. But another part of my practice, I don't think we touched on yet, but it's really important, is the use of contracts.
Okay.
And just to throw that out there, that's another thing that's really important for business owners. Okay, a lot of business owners overlook contracts.
Mm.
They'll just verbalize the agreement with someone, or just do a handshake or whatever, but contracts are also important. So did you want me to jump into that and talk about
Absolutely. Because you're right. I mean, oftentimes, again, because I've been there, right? I've been there as an entrepreneur, and you have to decide on where you're going to spend money and where you're not going to spend money. And so you get that paperwork and you try to read through it and do your best. And as long as nothing seems ridiculous, you sign off on it, but you don't know that legal jargon. And so absolutely talk about that a bit.
Yes. So I have another solution for people with contracts. I'll talk about that and after I go through my whole analysis of contracts. Now, contracts is something that I'm very widely known for.
Okay.
And the thing with contracts is that I'll say it like this: contracts rule the world. Everything that goes on in the world is a contract in place for it. Right. Your cell phone bill, your rent, everything involves contract. A lot of people do real estate in the wholesale industry and they don't ever put any money down or anything. All they do is sign a contract and transfer the contract, right? So contracts rule everything. And so it's imperative as a business owners that you guys accurately outline your agreement with someone in writing. And the reason is because verbal agreements are enforceable in most states, right? So if you verbalize an agreement with someone, in most states it is enforceable. But the problem is we have to go and prove that it exists, right? Now, the person that you have the agreement with, are they going to get up there and testify and say, yes, we had the agreement if they don't want to, do whatever they're supposed to? No, right? So then you're going to have to spend more money on an attorney like me for me to try to prove up the case. And, hopefully we have enough evidence to win. So skip all of that. I like my clients to operate as sophisticated business owners. I need you guys to be great at what you're doing. I need you guys to put all of your energy into your craft and bringing in customers. I don't need you out here stressing about legal matters, right? So I like to do preventative legal consulting with my clients. And so if you have a new business deal, right, come to me and say, Candice, this is what the deal is. Okay, I can draft an agreement for you to make sure everything that you are expecting to get out of the deal is outlined in contract, but also I do defensive writing as well in my contracts. So what that means is a lot of people don't pay attention to, well, what if things go bad? Like you said, generally just reading, okay, the amount is right, this is how much they're supposed to pay me, and you sign, right?
Right.
But what if something goes wrong and then there's a lawsuit? Do you pay attention to the section in the contract that says what state and what county this lawsuit will be held in? Say, for example, we're in Chicago, but we're doing a business deal with someone in California. Now, if we come and disagree with each other and we have to go and file suit, is it going to be in Illinois or will it be in California? Now, for a new business owner residing in Illinois, someone who doesn't have very much money, coming in yet from the business, it will be very difficult for them to file a lawsuit in California, right?
Sure. Yep.
Right. So that's an example of my defensive drafting when I'm, doing a contract for a client. I have to make sure I'm looking out for those type of things. And there are a number of other defensive things that I have to put in the contract for my client to just make sure that they are thoroughly protected in case something did go wrong. So on one hand, I'm outlining exactly what they're supposed to get in the agreement. And then on the other hand, I'm making sure that, hey, if something goes wrong, my client is in a good position to defend themselves or to bring a lawsuit against this person. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so another thing is, a lot of times when people are doing business deals, the person that they're doing the deal with will give them a contract, right?
Right.
And so I always tell people, when someone gives you a contract, no, you never just sign it. You need to take it to your own attorney so they can review it.
Right.
Again, like I just said, when I'm drafting a contract for my client, I don't care about the other person they're doing business with.
Right.
I care about my client. So I'm putting everything in the kitchen sink to properly position my client in case something goes wrong. Okay. I don't care about the other person. And the same goes for the other attorney. So when someone gives you a contract, you automatically should assume their attorney drafted this to the T for their benefit and not mine. Right. So let me take this to my attorney to review it. Right. And so, of course, in those situations, I will review the contract and then I'll consult with the client and let them know, hey, look, provisions, 1 through 5 have things in there that I don't like. We need to take this out. And we also need to insert these additional provisions. I will be completely candid with the client about what needs to be done. So speaking of all of this, I realize that some people just don't want to pay, or they can't afford to pay for contract services. I also realize that we are in the era of information. So everybody thinks that they can Google stuff and they automatically know what they're doing, right?
Right.
And so I get so frustrated with some of my clients sometimes because they don't have me review it sometimes, right? Or because, other people, before they hire me, they will try to go and Google how to do something, and they'll proceed in contract without me. But it always happens. Something goes wrong, and because they didn't do it the right way, now they have to come to me to try to negotiate a settlement, or to come to me and try to sue the person or whatever. And so it's always stressful for people to go through the lawsuit process and things like that. So what I created was a course, and it's actually launching on October 1st. And the course is going to be me teaching regular people how to walk through a contract and the major things in each and every contract that you should look for. Because I know we're smarty pants in 2020. We all stuff. I'm the same way. Like I'm going to Google how to do this before I go actually pay somebody, right?
Max.
With that in mind, I said, hey, let me create this course where I can just walk through the major provisions in the contract that everybody should know and look out for. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something else that people can do. And it's only 99 bucks. So 99 bucks, you'll be educated on the things you need to look for in the contract, the things you need to look out for, and make sure that they're not in your contract, and all that good stuff.
That's dope. That's dope. So is that a class? Is that something that you put out there and someone would go and sign up for $99? And how long is it? How long does it last? And is it interactive? Are attendees able to ask questions, et cetera, or is it just one-way communication from you?
Sure. So the class is only an hour long, so it's not too long.
Okay.
And then, yes, they can type questions and things like that. And then I'll be there actually going through live contracts with you guys. So I'll share the contracts on the screen so you guys can see me going through actual contracts to see like what regular contracts are. Well, not what they are, but what attorneys are thinking when we actually review a contract, right? So you'll see me go through the contract and say, oh, nope, this right here is wrong. They're saying, my client is going to waive their right to a jury. Nope, we're not doing that. And then I'll explain to you why. So that way, going forward, when you're reviewing contracts on your own, you'll have the knowledge to at least kind of hold your own weight, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Candice, this has been amazing. You've given us so many nuggets to pull from and learn from. If someone is interested in your services, they're interested in the class, they're interested in the $19.99. You see, I got that $19.99 in my mind. If they're interested in that, how should they connect with you?
Sure. So the first place you can go to is my website, which is www.chantell.law, and it's SHANTELL and then law.com. So you can go there, and of course there are different tabs where we can click on, hey, consultation, or hey, let me subscribe to this $19.99 attorney thing. Outside of that, you guys can email me at Candice@ChantellLaw.com. And then you can also call me at 469-66-1647. And those are all the ways you can reach me.
Perfect. I appreciate you, Candice. This has been great. Hopefully, and I know my audience got value out of this. So as we wrap, and I think I know what you're going to say, but it'll kind of tie a bow on this conversation of ours. So if you're speaking to new entrepreneurs that are listening to this podcast, they've learned and taken in great information, but you want to kind of give them one piece of advice based on your experience of being in the law practice or the law space and industry and working with entrepreneurs, what would that advice be?
That's difficult because it's so much.
as it pertains to structuring and setting up your business.
Yeah. So I guess the biggest piece of advice would be to pick a legal entity that's going to provide you liability protection.
Okay.
So an LLC. That way you have that added extra layer of protection in case something goes wrong or you mess up or something like that. So that would probably be my biggest and best advice. Outside of that, it's just find an attorney and connect with them. So when you do have a question or when you do need something, you can reach out to that person. So those would be my two main things.
Excellent. Thank you again, Attorney Candice S. Patrick. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to another episode of the Droppin Knowledge Podcast, episode 5. Remember, you can find us on Apple, you can find us on Spotify, you can find us on YouTube, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on Instagram. Just search for Droppin Knowledge and make sure that you include podcasts. We'll continue to educate the culture. We'll continue to bring you superstars like Candice S. Patrick, just sharing information. And again, you're getting this all for the free. So free game every week we're dropping so that we can put our people in position to win. So thank you again, Candice. Thank you for listening. And we will see you guys on the next episode. Peace.